I remember listening to Ernie Harwell. It was a conversation with him before he died, and they always asked him, hey, how did you get to where you are? And he would always say, I'm a turtle on a fence post. I didn't get here by myself.
Welcome back to the ROCC Pod. It is produced for the Royal Oak, Michigan Chamber of Commerce. I am John Gay from JAG Podcast Productions. My co-host Lisa Bibby from Century 21 Northland is a little bit under the weather today, so I am flying solo. Today, pleased to welcome Beau McCarthy from Genesis the Church. Pastor Beau, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here with you, John.
Okay, so I believe you are the first man of the cloth that we've had here on the show, and right around the holidays, we're going to publish this in early December. So I want to start by dispelling some stereotypes here. Tell me how you and your co-pastor Nate met.
Nate and I played in a ska band together in the mid-90s. We were both in the Royal Oak area, and he had the ska band that he was forming together. We were called the Insyderz, and true ska fashion, we were spelled with a Y and a Z, you know. And I played bass, and Nate played drums, and we did that from the mid-90s until the 2000s, like full time. And that's how we met.
Meeting in a band, that's what I meant about dispelling stereotypes here. How is it that you went from being in a band to what it is you guys do now?
That's a really long story. I'm not originally from Michigan. I'm from Missouri originally, but I remember when I was here, and I remember listening to Ernie Harwell, the announcer for the Detroit Tigers, and it was a conversation with him before he died, and they always asked him, hey, how did you get to where you are? And he would always say, I'm a turtle on a fence post. I didn't get here by myself. And that idea, where the way that life kind of moves people around, is very mysterious, but the turtle on the fence post is definitely one that I relate to as far as getting places where you're like, how did I get here? Well, I didn't get here by myself. And I loved music, I loved creativity, but I was definitely a spiritual person. And I was, even as a band, we were writing about God and talking about God and engaging spiritually, even as a ska band. And so in the early 2000s, when the church was formed, it seemed like it's a natural transition to be using art and conversation and connecting with people in the way that music does in a vibrant faith community.
So the church was formed here locally, or it's part of a larger organization?
Yes, it was formed here locally. The church has its roots in a couple of different places. So, well, first, Genesis was an offshoot of a church in the northern suburbs in Troy called Kensington Community Church. And so in the early 2000s, there were a group of us that launched out of there. We were all in our 20s. And we're like, we're going to start a church in Royal Oak. And we have moved around in Royal Oak for the last 25 years. And so we kind of came out of that community, but kind of formed our own for the past 25 years.
Well, how much formal training is involved in going from a layperson, I guess, to a pastor?
I guess it all depends on who you ask. Kind of terrifying. I think there are different movements when there's quite a bit of formal training, and then there's other movements when there's not very much at all. It's sort of like, has anyone ever tried to become someone who can actually marry people? What kind of formal training can be involved in that? And for many, it was just going online and filling out a sheet. Now, I did a little bit more than that. But I am on an organization and a movement of people who just identified gifting, character, competency, and then tried to empower people to use those gifts for the greater good.
Okay. In talking to you a little bit over email before we sat down today, and then also looking at the church's website, the word that jumps off the page at me is inclusivity. Talk to me about that as a value for your church.
Absolutely. We do think it's one of the things that makes our community unique. And inclusivity has been something that we have said that marks us. It hasn't always been that case.
Okay.
There's these stories of inclusion that have happened in the history of the church. So let me back up and tell you one more story. In 2010, we merged together with an American Baptist church. They were called the First Baptist Church of Royal Oak. And they were started in 1839. And in 2010, their community was getting smaller and aging. There was no kids. And in 2010, we created a friendship together with the people who were there, and we formed one community together. it was like this picture of inclusion. It was like we were primarily 20 and 30-year-olds, and they were primarily 60s and 70-year-olds. And we thought like we actually look more like a healthy community if we join together, more so than just one sort of demographic of people, one age range, one particular look, that we could actually be a better expression of family by moving together. And so they also had this history of inclusion. In 1839, when the church was started, there was an African American born free. His name was Hamlet Harris. And when he bought about 120 acres of property in the Royal Oak, Berkeley area, and when the church at that time was getting ready to start, he donated $25 for the buying of the land. That bought about 20 acres of property. And so just the church has this legacy of already inclusion. You know, African Americans had very little rights in 1839.
Sure, yeah.
And here's somebody who's giving away of his resources in order to build a community of faith in this area. Also, the church has this story of after World War II, there was a family who had been displaced from the Japanese internment camps. And I mean, that's a horrific story in American history. They were in the California area and everything was taken from them and they were placed in an internment camp. And then after the war, they were given $25 and a bus ticket to kind of go wherever you wanted to go. But you lost everything.
Yeah.
And this family had been displaced in Ohio, but was still looking to place down roots. And the community here had hired the father who had been displaced to be a caretaker and pulled that family in. His name was George Shimikochi, and his son's name was Nobu. And Nobu was here when I met him, and he died in 2013. But this was a family who felt embraced and welcomed when Japanese Americans were looked down upon. Our country did not treat the Japanese Americans with any kind of welcome, especially during World War II, or a majority. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
I can't speak for everybody, but I know that it was real challenging for that. And then the church also had this history of welcoming refugees after Vietnam War. There was a Vietnam family that they brought in. So there was this history of inclusion. And we kind of, when we look at the teachings of Jesus and the life of Jesus, it seemed to be one that was about inclusion. It was about welcoming and loving people and loving your neighbor as yourself. And it's definitely something that we wanted to mark us and to be known by. That was really becoming apparent for us as in the community as of recently. And our community started with having a less than an inclusive posture towards the LGBTQ community. We kind of held those traditional lines of engagement, and it came that way. But as we were continuing to grow and to learn, we were kind of saying, I think we're reading this wrong. I think we're engaging this conversation wrong. I don't think that this posture of exclusion is actually bringing flourishing for anyone. And so we came together as a community and changed those postures, repented of those ideas, kind of changed our mind, tried to correct them and to communicate to our community about what it means to be an inclusive community. And that is way more than just LGBTQ. That's everything from that our building is handicap accessible. It's making sure that people can engage and can flourish in our community, from having gender-neutral bathrooms in our community. We don't even speak, or the teachers don't stand on the platform, an elevated place, in order to teach, because we want it to be accessible for anyone. So we just teach right there on the flat floor in order to communicate the inclusivity of our community. So we know we still have places to learn, but we think that it's a posture that marks us.
I've seen videos on the website of sermons, and I was struck by that you're not on high above the congregation, that you're just speaking with them. And I think there's a valuable lesson in what you just said, Beau. It's that too often these days we just get bogged down in Team A and Team B and politics and dig down into ideologies. But I will give you and your community credit for saying, hey, this is how we've always looked at it, but let's take an open mind and fresh perspective and reconsider some of our positions. And I think the world could use a little bit more of that on all sides.
Absolutely.
Another word that jumps out at me from all of your information online and talking to you is being a beacon. What is significant about the word beacon?
Well, first, this idea of beacon for us, it's imagery. It's language that produces an idea in your mind. And it's kind of that lighthouse sort of metaphor of like letting your light shine in order to be a place of refuge and of kindness. And so that language kind of connects with us as a people that we want to be. It also ties back to some core teachings that Jesus left when he said, when he was speaking to these people, whoever was willing to listen, and he would say things like, "You are the light of the world. Let your light shine so others would see your good deeds and then give thanks to God." And it's like, that's a pretty clear statement. Do good deeds, do good things, and that is the light that shines. And so we try to use that sort of visionary language to kind of talk about who we are as a people, that we want to be a beacon. And for us, that really, we've kind of tried to break that down in some really simple and tactile things that we think that connect on a human level. So the first is, for us, when we talk to our own people about what this means, we use this language. We say that we want to be a people who walk with each other in suffering and joy. These are the moments that matter in life. When you're going through suffering, from whatever that is, from the loss of a parent, for the loss of a child, or getting cancer, or losing your job, all of the things that are suffering from getting illnesses, these are the things that matter in being a people who walk with each other, and suffering is a part of life. But we also want to be able to celebrate. We also want to be able to point to the good moments and celebrate when good is happening. So we really just try to invite our people to be those people where we acknowledge the pain, and we also acknowledge the good, and we want to step into those moments to be those types of people.
I love that. We always ask before a podcast for some fun tidbits and factoids about our guests, and you had sent me a note and said that you are the transracial adoptive parent of 2 boys, Harvest and Jericho. And in the interest of inclusivity, I've never seen the word transracial before. Can you explain that to me?
Within the adoption world, especially, my wife and I are both white, so we adopted children who are not of our race.
Okay.
And so the transracial just means that, so it's not of your own race, which is a pretty rarely new, idea and concept and practice that has taken place. And so I remember when we were getting the training and we were being met with by others, and they said one of these most profound ideas with this. They said, your identity will change from adopting a child of another race. Sometimes within the adoption conversation, some of the rhetoric can be like, well, it's love, and love saves the day, and we're just all going to be the same, and it's no big deal. And it's like, well, no, your identity as a family changes when you're a transracial family. So we've taken that learning and then applied that to our family, and it just sort of helped shape the ideas and the decisions that we make for where we live and what schools we go to and how we engage and how we try to train our sons or equip them. So.
Right, because I think as the parent, one of your roles is protector, and you may be dealing with circumstances that as a white male, you never would have had to experience firsthand or really think about much prior to your family growing like this. So I think that's very well said.
I'm a white man, my wife's white, and both of our sons are black.
Yep.
And I know nothing about being a black man. I cannot teach them, about those kinds of things. So I'm incredibly aware of that. And so then we'd just be diligent to be able to make sure that we're asking for help and that we have friends, in which we do, and a community that helps to raise our sons and teach them what we can.
Very well said. You've also mentioned to me that you value people's unique stories. Obviously, you and your family have a unique story, but what are some other stories that have shaped you and your community, Beau?
Oh, wow. I mean,
I've only got a few minutes here, so there's probably many, but pick a couple highlights if you could.
So we've got this whole wall in our community that tell the stories of the past. And those are a lot of the ones that I've even shared with you about Hamlet Harris, stories about George Shimikochi, stories about the way the community has functioned and the way they cared. So we care about those. We tell the story of how we merged together as a community. We're two, becoming one. These two communities that didn't look like each other or maybe even worship like each other, that came together for a better good. And we tell the stories of being an inclusive posture and the stories of what it is to change your mind. Because that is so crucial. We can tell those stories of hey, how is it that we could have certain ideas and that we grow in our learning and we change our mind? We tell those stories. We also tell stories of hard moments. And a way of actually valuing people's stories is a way of knowing that those stories are the things that have shaped them and have marked them and have made them who they are. And those are incredibly valuable. I think one of the things I'm coming to believe is that one of the greatest assets that each of us have are our stories. And I think many of us don't know how much those stories do speak over us about things that we should be pursuing. They almost give us guidance for the future. And so we think They tell a beautiful story. Now, here's language I would use about valuing people's stories. And now this might be a stretch and a reach for most people. I would say this for every human, whether they know it or not, their story tells the story of God. Not in religious terms, but it tells the story of life and of love and about trials and about suffering and about engagement. And they have these markers of beauty and goodness. And so they tell these beautiful stories that have been told from the beginning of time. And the most of us maybe just don't know it.
As a podcast producer, in a way, you and I are both professional storytellers. So I like your angle there. I also want to, before I forget, welcome you back into the Royal Oak Chamber. I know you've sort of reignited your involvement as a church with the chamber. So welcome back. Have you had any interaction with the folks of the chamber since sort of coming back around?
Yeah, I went to one of the coffees. I think it was a Friday morning networking coffee. It was wonderful. Oh my gosh, it was so good. I mean, just hearing the people share a little 30-second, like, just
they're all sharing
themselves.
Their stories.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I just came away just feeling like full. After meeting the people that were there, it was an amazing hour just to grab coffee and to get to connect with some people and what they're trying to do in their careers or lives. I loved it.
Well, you obviously are a people person, which I would assume is a bit of a requirement in your current line of work. So
it helps.
Yeah. I know this is a time of year sometimes folks are thinking about going to church or maybe reconnecting with their religion. If folks want to learn more about Genesis the Church, what are the best ways to learn more information?
A couple of things. You can always go to our website and check out who we are. On our site, we try to make it easy for you to hear the things that make us unique. And we've got a number of teachings on there about our posture towards inclusivity. We think this really helps people get who we are and the way that we function in the world. So that's a great way just to kind of get a sense to check it out, especially if you're nervous about going into a faith community, depending on what your experiences have been in the past. If you're not nervous and you're a complete extrovert and you love meeting people and seeing new things, come on a Sunday. It's going to be fine. If you like to engage in that way and just see new things or experience something, we're an authentic and welcoming community. So come and check it out, or you can stand at a distance and watch. Or reach out to me. I love meeting people for coffee just to kind of hear about their own stories and to engage in that way. So they can even reach out to me personally if they would like just even to hear more.
We'll put the church website and your email in the show notes from the podcast, so if anybody wants to connect, they can. So I know you've got some, as you said, you can, if you were curious to sort of peek at it from the comfort of your own home, you can check out some Zoom sermons that are posted on the website. You've also got a podcast too. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. That's on the website too.
And those are our teachings, right? They're ongoing teachings and the kind of stories that we tell that are on the website. Yes.
Fantastic. Well, it's been wonderful to meet you, Pastor Beau. Thank you for spending a few minutes today, and we'll see you at a chamber event soon, if not in church.
Fabulous, John. Thanks for your time.
All right. I am John Gay from Jag Podcast Productions. I'm the podcast guy. If you like the way this podcast sounds and you want me to help you create your own podcast for you or your business, you can find me at jagpodcastproductions.com or on social media at Jag Podcast Productions. Shout out to my co-host Lisa Bibby with Century 21 Northland. If you want to know more about her and how she can help you love where you live, you can find her at soldbylisab.com. We want to thank you for checking out this episode of the ROCC Pod. It is produced for the Royal Oak, Michigan Chamber of Commerce. To learn more about the chamber events, including what we've got coming up in 2026, you can visit royaloakchamber.com.